We are live for another one of these recruit reaction shows. It's a blast being here. I can't believe we only have one more week left in this season. I love doing these Saturday evening shows, and you guys love being here. So I appreciate that. And also, hey, you guys are now watching the recruit reaction show on the 100K subscribed Rivals Recruits channel. Seriously, thank you to everybody on Friday at about 1 p.m.-ish. It was a Friday news dump, but we crossed over. We went from 99, how many nines are there? 6 nines? 6 nines. 6 nines. So yeah, 6 nines to 100,000. Thank you guys. What are we watching today? Put it in the chat. I want to know. Some of the early games, nothing really exciting. Everything pretty much went the way that we thought it would with Ohio State, Texas A&M, Oklahoma. The Oklahoma game was good, but I thought they were going to win. Georgia, Alabama, Auburn. We got to see a little Deuce Knight today. What did you guys think of that? We talked so much about Deuce Knight last cycle. Kind of cool to see him out there throwing touchdowns to Cam Coleman. It only makes you wonder, maybe he should have been throwing more touchdowns to Cam Coleman this season, but we're going to break it down. I hate to break it to you guys, but we are Fongless today. No Steve Wiltfong on today's show. He's out doing daddy stuff, hanging out with the family. Good for him. We're going to get him back for rivalry week, but we do have a fun slate today. We're going to talk to a bunch of different people from around the network. And why not, Trey, why not start in Oxford? Oxford right now is the epicenter of all things college football. And even if you're not an Ole Miss fan or an LSU fan or a UF fan, I think this is really intriguing. I think whatever happens here with Lane Kiffin is we're on the precipice of potentially the new era of college football. And I mean that if Lane Kiffin stays at Ole Miss. If Lane Kiffin goes somewhere else, it's kind of business as usual. But we're seeing this at Ole Miss. We're seeing this at Texas Tech. Dan Lanning planting his flag at Oregon. I mean, for Oregon was a turnstile. Willie Taggart, Mario Cristobal. But now Oregon is considered one of these top-tier programs that coaches don't leave. And in this NIL era, you wonder what's going to happen at Ole Miss. So let's bring in OM Spirit, Ben Garrett. Ben has – God is good. Ben Garrett's here.
All the time, Josh. Wait a second. Hold on. Ole Miss is off today. They didn't play football. Wait, everybody just kind of kicked back and relaxed in Rebel Land, right? Right?
Well, right. But you had an emergency live last night. First of all, I love watching your lives.
It's awesome.
You talk to the Ole Miss fan unlike anybody else in the industry. I tune in like yesterday when that news broke. I was going back between your live and Andy Staples live, like one after another. And you guys have just been full throttle with this stuff. And, we're getting almost hourly updates on the Lane Kiffin situation. And if you could, in like 30 to 45 seconds, can you catch the outsiders up to where we are Saturday, November 22nd at 5 p.m. Central? Where do things stand?
Lane Kiffin could have Ole Miss today, LSU today, Florida today. I think the general consensus is that Florida's kind of faded a little bit in this, but there's no doubt that Lane Kiffin is a wanted man, and at every opportunity to kind of quiet any and all potential noise or to shoot down reports like information gathering trips from his family to Baton Rouge and Gainesville, Lane has taken every opportunity to not do so. He's intentionally kept his options open. So what we do know is there was a meeting with Keith Carter, Ole Miss Athletics Director, on Friday. I'd been telling the people at the Ole Miss Spirit, OleMissSpirit.com, and Fleetable on 3, sign up today for just $1. I've been telling the people I didn't expect actually much clarity from this quote meeting, but we did get some because there was some legitimate doubt as to whether or not Lane Kiffin was going to coach the Egg Bowl. He is going to coach the Egg Bowl. And I think initially, and on the live I did, the way the phrasing at the end of this statement of there will be an announcement expected on the future of Lane Kiffin the Saturday following the Egg Bowl. I think that verbiage, that wording, really, for a lot of people, raised up the alarm bells. And you started to see, of course, reports of the offers from LSU, some from Florida. Where are we right now? The same place that we've been for 2 weeks. Lane Kiffin could stay or he could go. And both are very realistic options. And y'all have to remember here, y'all, a lot of people say, well, it's a cop out. He's already guaranteed the deal with LSU. He's already guaranteed. I've had Ole Miss people say, dude, he's not going anywhere still, even after yesterday. You're dealing with Lane Kiffin here. This is a character unlike any other in the history of college football. He's an unreliable narrator, and I have no doubt that he's had substantive down the road conversations with all of these schools, and now he could change with the wind. If you made me guess, he's probably leaning LSU. But honestly, he was as late as Thursday telling Ole Miss staff and staff meetings how he was feeling this incredible pull to stay at Ole Miss and how they were going to be building this dynasty together here, like what they built here. And then the next day he's all mad and wanting to go to LSU. So any of those things could happen, Josh. Any of them could happen. All we know is that he's going to coach the Egg Bowl. Unfortunately, that's really the only move I think Keith Carter had to make, because they had no legal recourse to not let him coach the Egg Bowl. But now, even when you're trying to put all the focus on the Egg Bowl and the preparations for that, while also covering your own basis for the business of Ole Miss football, this is still going to be the Lane Kiffin show this week. I'm very long-winded. You know this from watching my lives. I try to go 30, 45 seconds. I feel like I've so terribly went way over there. Sorry, buddy.
No, it's great. Because it's very convoluted. And like I said, the closer you are to it, the more important it is to you. But I also think that this is, if you're a fan of college football in general, if this should be intriguing to you, you know what I mean? Because you wrote a great column, and one of the things in there that you wrote is the real question is, what does he actually want? And I think that kind of speaks to the bigger issue, or not issue, but what's happening right now in college football. And a lot of people are wondering with this, with NIL and everything that's going on, are Texas Tech and are Ole Miss places that coaches can really sit down and have a career at, or are they more of a stepping stone? And I think that's why there's so much intrigue, not just from Ole Miss fans, not just LSU and Gator fans, but really from around the country. So what does he really want? What does Lane Kiffin actually want out of this?
Yeah, and that's the question, right? Because the flip side of that, from the Ole Miss side, where they're saying, well, he's staying, just trust the process, this, and this. It doesn't make any sense to me to delay an announcement that he's staying 8 more days and after the Egg Bowl, knowing what the distractions are going to be. But also on the same side of that coin, Lane Kiffin has been consistent and stubbornly consistent that he doesn't talk about this stuff in season. And he's holding to that. The problem with that, and I think where the issue and the disconnect comes from, is sending family members on information gathering missions to Baton Rouge and Gainesville is brazen, Josh. It's truly brazen. And it just speaks to the unprecedented nature in general of this situation. It's never happened before in college football. And no one really envisioned it could happen too. You know, that like a playoff team could potentially, just because it was winning too much, could potentially lose its coach. But Ole Miss is willing to match anything. Like, that is well understood. That has been relayed to Jimmy Sexton and Lane Kiffin, all those that consider themselves influencing voices in his ear. They will match the average annual salary. They will, of course, guarantee you as much as they can in NIL coffers. But Ole Miss is better at spending its money than other schools have been. The question is, what do you want? And I think that you're starting to see – I think that's really what's been at the forefront for Lane in his decision-making process as well, because just like the allure and the temptress that is going to the, quote, blue blood program, going to the LSUs, going to the Florida, it's never gone away for him. But – if you look at the landscape of college football, does it even matter anymore? At Ole Miss, you've won 10 games or more in 4 of the last 5 years. You're barreling towards the playoff. The whole point of the entire exercise, I thought we all agreed, was to get to this place that you're in now. So if the money's the same, yes, the resources, Ole Miss is never going to have the amount of resources as Florida and LSU, but Ole Miss is better at what it does than Florida and LSU is right now, operationally, both with the Grove Collective and their NIL apparatus and how they spend their money. Think of them a lot like, if you want to compare the SEC to the AFC, or not the AFC, but the AL East, and LSU is the Yankees. Well, Ole Miss is the Tampa Bay Rays, and who has been closer to a championship more recently than the Rays? Like they're right there in that contention status as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know what he wants, and it is quite literally like catching the wind when you're dealing with Lane Kiffin and trying to speak Lane Kiffinese. It is really hard to figure out what he wants to do, because I don't think even he knows what he wants to do. So what do we really know, Josh? That he's coaching the Egg Bowl, and that I blew that away, or blew that off when I heard that on last Sunday. I said, there's just no way. And then everything came to a head, and you started to go, oh, there was real consideration to that. That is the answer to that. And now, at the very least, it's bought everybody a little bit more time. Lane to continue his consideration process. I think he's very much open for business and considering leaving.
Yeah.
But it allows Ole Miss to go about the business of Ole Miss too, and that is continuing to go down the road with the potential replacement, who I think far and away would be the leading guy, John Sumrall.
All right. Last thing I want to ask you on this topic, because it's not going away. We're going to keep covering it. But how should Ole Miss fans feel? How should Ole Miss recruits feel?
It's a legitimate question. I think the recruiting piece is a lot easier, because Pete Golding, independent of Lane Kiffin, is going to be at Ole Miss next year. Mm-hmm. Independent of whether or not he were to get the job, should he leave and become the interim, I think him or Joe Judge would be those candidates, and Pete very well could get it. And I know he wants the job, but he has a unique situation unto Ole Miss, like completely independent of Lane. Has already told him twice he's not going with him anywhere. He's here at Ole Miss for myriad reasons, and they're quite unique and personal to him. And of all the coaches on campus, he's far and away the most likely coach to still be here next year, right? I think he would be at the very top of that. And he's the one spearheading the effort for the retention of the 2026 class and building out the strategy, or continuing to push forward with the strategy for the portal and stuff. Lane Kiffin, this is the hard truth. Lane Kiffin has never been much of a recruiter, never will be. Like his recruiting, like what makes him a good recruiter is when they bring him in on the official visit, or bring in the players to the official visit for their Lane Kiffin meeting.
Right.
Outside of that, it's very small.
It kind of just comes together in the end for Lane Kiffin between as long as he has a great season, it works out fine. And then you hit the transfer portal, you got a lot of momentum there. That's kind of been his formula. So yeah, but I guess what I'm asking is, are recruits asking questions, or does their NIL deals, or the prospect of NIL deals, depending on what state they're from, is that locking them in? And we haven't seen many decommits, if any, to this point. Mm-hmm. So is recruiting pretty stable right now?
Yes, because for everyone else, the people that actually do the work, the assistant coaches, it's business as usual. And I for a lot of them, they're going to be here regardless. So most of these kids don't have an agreement or a potential agreement with Lane Kiffin. Their agreement is with the Grove Collective and the University of Mississippi, including rev share stuff that they've already agreed to in high school. So I don't think you're going to see a lot of movement. I mean, of course, recruits hear about it, but I just don't think. I think that piece is, because of the culture now, is much more mitigated than the fan piece, which is, of course, Ole Miss fans are frustrated. Of course, they're angry. Of course, they're tired of this. Of course, but I will say to them,
they're winning.
This is the best problem Ole Miss could have. Ole Miss is winning at an unprecedented clip. Everybody wants its head coach. And if the worst outcome for you in this entire saga is that you have to promote internally for the playoffs, maybe still win a title, and then trade Lane Kiffin for John Sumrall at the end of it, that's about as good a place as Ole Miss has ever been as far as going out and hiring a new head coach. Yeah. So if Lane were to stay, which is still very much, I'm more like in the moment yesterday, I'm like, man, there was something off about that. That old statement, everything about it just didn't make any sense. Mm-hmm. But today, in talking to more people, it is every bit up in the air as it was on Friday. I just think that Keith and Lane knew they had to say something because the current situation was untenable. Yeah. And either one way or the other, he could stay, he could go. But like Ole Miss fans, if he were to stay, they would all fall back in line, Josh. I mean, that's the way it is, because at the end of all things, Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss has been the perfect marriage. That's why he is so tempted and feels the pull to stay. And that's why Ole Miss fans are responding and are so angry, so viscerally angry, that he just won't commit, that he won't do the Dan Lanning and come out and say, hey, guys, I'm here, like even Brent Key, who's talking to Florida very regularly, would be on the hot board for Ole Miss. Cut me open. You'll see the colors I bleed.
Yep.
He's just saying nothing. Instead, taking the shot at the Citadel crowd. When then today you look at it around college football, the pathetic crowds at Georgia and Alabama, wherever it is, they're tired of not getting the credit where they feel the credit is due, and that is Ole Miss has given a crap and really taken a step as a program with it, mostly because of Lane Kiffin, but also like they've moved beyond just a cult of personality now with their organizational structure that is better than most that many have tried to duplicate, and haven't been able to.
I know. What a crazy time to be in Oxford. But it is a problem. But like you said, it's the best possible problem Ole Miss fans could have right now. So we're going to keep covering this thing. We'll see if there's any recruiting impact to it. Right now, like you said, everything kind of solid. So everybody, including Ole Miss fans, including Ole Miss recruits, everybody waiting on this announcement from Lane Kiffin. And right now, just 7 days out and things turn on a dime. But right now, if I read it right, you are saying you are leaning toward Lane Kiffin leaving towards the Bayou, which is a little surprising because I feel like when Brian Kelly was fired, there was a kind of a period maybe of shock. There wasn't much talk. I mean, well, the governor was doing a lot of talking, but there wasn't much talk about Lane Kiffin. I feel like the Lane Kiffin heat started like 10 days ago when it felt like it was Ole Miss or UF, and now it feels like it's LSU.
I'll tell you completely honestly, I don't know. I have no real conviction one way or the other. After yesterday and everybody I talked to, including big movers and shakers at Ole Miss that have a real impact on this stuff, pay real money to have this kind of winning product on the field. Oh, he's gone. But today, those same people are like, well, he just doesn't know what he wants to do. He's bought a week, blah, 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 blah. I would say Lane leaving, even though, and would call LSU in that scenario probably the one I would pick if you forced me to guess. But the bottom line is this is Lane Kiffin. This is like catching the wind. I don't think even he knows what he wants to do. But now he's got another week, even though he's going to have to answer questions about it. He has a week to really figure that out and actually just coach ball and focus on the one thing that really matters around here, which is getting this Ole Miss football team, which is 10-1. 10-1 historically, 10-1, 6-1 in the SEC to beat its in-state rival who could absolutely beat them and get to the playoff. Because if he loses the Egg Bowl, like it makes the Egg Bowl the most consequential game in modern, if not modern, certainly in modern history, but if not in Ole Miss history, period, point blank, period. Because if he loses it, all of this stuff comes to a head in a much different way. So in that way, now it starts to crystallize why they made the announcement as they did. I don't think anything's been decided. I don't think he knows what he wants to do. I think that Ole Miss knows that it has to really get its ducks in a row now for potential replacements, because it's just as much a possibility that he leaves for LSU or Florida than he stays at Ole Miss. But I am done trying to predict or trying to catch the wind that is Lane Kiffin. Yeah. It's impossible, because today he could be thinking or feeling like he did on Thursday, telling his staff, I just want to stay here. And then tomorrow go, yeah, but Death Valley, you know what I mean? Or, oh, chomp them. I've always wanted to be the next Steve Spurrier. I mean, all of that is perfectly plausible, perfectly reasonable, and like easy to argue that side of. I think all this has done is made the Egg Bowl the most consequential game that Ole Miss has ever had. And Lane Kiffin understands the directive here. Hey, all this other stuff, you want to keep, requesting an open marriage when we're ready to change the locks, fine and dandy. Win the Egg Bowl, and then we'll really reassess. And right now, I would say, like with the way everything is set up, because it just doesn't make sense to me why you wouldn't just announce he was staying if he was staying and leave and eliminate this for 8 days. Instead, you've left it open-ended. So that tells me it is still very much open-ended. But anyone pretending like LSU's offering $90 million, Ole Miss isn't, there's nothing Ole Miss hasn't offered or guaranteed to Lane Kiffin. It's just a matter of what do you really want? And I don't think he even knows right now, because the way college football is now in 2025 and the calendar and how teams like Ole Miss, Texas Tech, like you mentioned, you don't have to go to the blue blood anymore. Pat McAfee said it on game day, man. Enjoy. It's okay to be happy. But how does the person who really has never known regular or consistent year-to-year happiness and contentment, have you really have you learned it here? Is that something? And I think that's something he's really battling with. And, you're hearing Pete Thamel talk about, I'm not the only one that said LSU. Pete Thamel's on their on ESPN talking about it. It's a LSU Ole Miss battle.
Right.
I think it's a Lane Kiffin battle. I think he feels perfectly valid to go any of those places. He's going to make $13.5 million next year, more than Kirby Smart, and he still hasn't won anything. Right? I mean, that's the craziest part.
Yeah.
That's the craziest part of this. But like recruiting, Ole Miss is continuing to push forward. Pete Golding's got that train home, and they got the coaches out on the road. I mean, they're all out on the road right now recruiting.
Right. Yeah.
So
it's a bye week.
Business as usual. Exactly. It's business as usual now. And he sent them out. He said, hey, go recruit. Like, it's normal.
Go do your job.
Yeah. Like if he was going to LSU, I just find it really hard to believe. So what I'm saying is nothing's been decided.
Yeah.
This week, we're not going to learn anything. It's all about win the Egg Bowl because I don't think anybody wants to see this situation, be it Ole Miss, Lane Kiffin, anybody wants to see what this situation would look like coming off a loss to Mississippi State. Right. That would be the true nightmare and tragedy.
Yeah, leave a bad taste in your mouth. All right. Well, Ben Garrett, you guys are doing a heck of a job at OM Spirit. Appreciate you dropping by. It's going to be a heck of a week, man. A heck of a week.
It's going to be nuts. And Josh Newberg is awesome. I've read him for a long time now. I'm a coworker with him at the best sports media place in the world. You're awesome. Keep doing your thing, rocking and rolling. And Steve, Mr. Will Fong Bomb, I hope you're having Daddy Day and come lock back in for this week of Lane Kiffin, the Lane Kiffin saga, the latest edition of Keeping Up with the Kifdashians, man. Come back in. We need you.
The Kifdashians. All right, Ben Garrett, thank you. OM Spirit. There it is. What do you guys think? Where's Lane Kiffin going to go? Just hearing out Ben. Doesn't sound like he's going to be at Oxford next year. That's coming from an insider. I mean, that's just his gut, and I agree with him. I think Lane kind of wakes up on different sides of the bed every day, and who knows what's going to happen. I mean, half of me thinks that maybe we will know something before the Egg Bowl. Ben doesn't think so, but, just the way that these reports have been flying out almost left and right, I don't know. Just feels like something could shake out, but the plan is next Saturday, Lane Kiffin will announce. You guys tell me in the chat, where do you think Lane Kiffin is going to go? All right, let's move on and talk. Let's go out west. We are going to bring in national analyst Adam Gorney on the West Coast. So why not talk Oregon USC? Adam, it was all about the Ducks in the first half. USC definitely fighting. They connected on a few big blows. Then I started the show, and it looks like USC has made a game of this. They've scored in the second half, and they've cut the score to 7 points. What do you think so far?
Yeah, definitely an interesting game. It was kind of back and forth in the first half, settled in the second half as Dan Lanning's defense and Danton Lynn's defense have kind of settled in against those offenses. I think every recruit that's there is intrigued by both teams. Obviously, the Oregon atmosphere is great. Autzen isn't the biggest stadium in the world, but it's so loud and so fun there. But a lot of the kids who are up there too are looking at USC as well. So they get to double dip on this game. A lot of fans think like the outcome of one game matters a whole lot. It really doesn't to recruits. They'll get to see and get a feel for USC on the road. They'll get a real feel for Oregon here. Right now it's 28-21. Oregon is driving.
Yeah. But in a way, I'm just going to play devil's advocate here. For 2026, you're right. Probably Hayes in the barn at this point. NIL deals are struck. Guys know where they're going. They got their spots. But when it comes to 2027, there's a lot of USC Oregon battles, and you better believe there's going to be some bragging rights. I mean, for the next year, these coaching staffs get to compare themselves to each other, and they'd rather come out on top. So, speaking of who are some of the 2027 battles? I mean, where are some of these battleground recruitments being laid?
Yeah, and there are definitely interesting ones. Oregon has not had as much success as you almost think that they have in Southern California. They've gone in there for like primo players. Jordan Davison, the freshman running back who's piling up the touchdowns, Mateo, some other very important guys. But in terms of, an entire recruiting class, they've never even had more than 35% in that range of players from California during Dan Lanning's time there. So I think it's a big deal that Lincoln Riley has over 50% of his first class in 5 from more than half from California this year. But there are definitely tons of battles going on. I think Danny Lang will be one, although Ohio State is probably the leader. USC is definitely creeping up there. And then Oregon is right there as well. Josiah Molden, whose brother Elijah played at Washington. He turned down Oregon. Ohio State, Oregon. But again, interested in USC. Toa Satelli, the linebacker from Hawaii. Definitely another guy that's looking at both. Caden Henderson, the linebacker from Tampa, was just at USC, and they said he could be their next big-time linebacker. In a school that has had a lot of linebacker tradition over the years. He's at Oregon this weekend. So on and on they go, not only from California kids, but from kids in the Pacific Northwest. Mm-hmm. And then nationally, there will definitely be some names that both are getting looked at.
Yeah. Let's go back to the state of California. You were able to speak with modern day standouts, Chris Henry Jr. and Caden Dixon Wyatt, both of whom are committed to the Ohio State Buckeyes, both of whom are being recruited by USC and Oregon. USC and Oregon would love to flip either of them, but is there any chance that either of these guys move away from their Ohio State commitments?
Yeah. So Friday was a very interesting day. There was like a lot of news, a lot of rumors, a lot of stuff going on about all these guys. And basically what I did was hit the phones and then hit the road to the Mater Dei game to see exactly what was going on with those guys. Mm-hmm. And Caden Dixon Wyatt was actually the surprising one after the game because there was a lot of USC talk. I talked to a really good source on this one who basically was like, USC will not have the money to pay Caden Dixon Wyatt what Ohio State will. But if his mom wants him home, if he wants to stay home, if he wants to be around a lot of his teammates that are committed to USC, they would welcome him with open arms. So after the game, I basically was like, all right, cut it out. It's less than 2 weeks to signing day. Where is everything? And he was like, yeah, it looks like I'm going to sign with Ohio State. Now, was that him pushing us off for the next 10 days so we don't continue to ask what's going on? We'll see. But I got the sense from talking to sources and then talking to Caden that it was like, yeah, he can come if he wants, but, we're not going to be able to pay him what Ohio State's going to be able to pay him. So I actually trust Caden Dixon Wyatt with his word last night. Chris Henry was also interesting. They had lost the game, so right. You know what it's like. It's always tough to talk to kids when they lose a game, especially at the end of their senior years. But
yeah, their high school career comes to an end. They don't exactly want to talk too much.
Expound on it. Yeah. So Chris Henry was basically like, I'm not talking about recruiting. So whether you interpret that as I'm going to Ohio State, leave me alone, or the reporting that we've had, over the last 24, 48 hours that, his agent is asking for $1.5 million if he's going to flip. And Ohio State is in the $1 million range. So they're trying to get a 50% premium there, which you could certainly read as, he's going to Ohio State unless someone really comes in with the big McDonald's bag. So it will be interesting down the stretch there because Oregon is definitely trying. I've been told USC is not recruiting him. So that rumor has been laid to rest. And then Texas and possibly Miami are in there. But it does, I might be naive here, a few days out, a week and a half out into signing day. But I did get the sense that both will sign with Ohio State.
Okay. And when it comes to the Oregon Ducks, and they have the most 5-star commitments in the country heading into signing day week. Any chance any of these guys go elsewhere? I mean, we feel good right now about Kendra Harrison. We feel good about Ian Nacho. I guess really, who does it come down to? Anthony Tank Jones,
Jalen Lott.
Lott. Are those really the only two when it comes down the stretch that we're concerned about? Not even, I wouldn't say concerned, but keeping an eye on.
Yeah, watchful, I would say, is a fair word. Iannacho's up there again this weekend.
Right.
So I think any, threat there has passed, especially with Penn State not having a coach. He had kind of flirted with Maryland for a little bit. LSU doesn't have a coach. Auburn doesn't have a coach. I mean, everywhere Oregon, that is a perfect setup for Oregon to keep him in that class. Kendra Harrison was a kid early on who I was like, man, that's an early commitment. We'll see if that sticks. And he's stuck the whole way. Jet Washington seems to be done.
Yeah.
Jalen Lott will be the interesting one. Can Miami swoop in there? Can something be a surprise? And then Tank Jones, can someone come in? Will Auburn hire a coach before signing day? Probably not. We'll see. Can they get in there? Can Alabama make a one final push for him? And like I've said before, the feeling around Tank Jones was that he wanted to stay close to home, that his family wanted him to stay close
Right.
to home. But then again, he has really just sort of expressed interest in Oregon since that commitment on a serious level. So
couple visits to Miami, but I feel like that was like in the first quarter of the season, and we haven't really talked too much about it since then.
Yeah, and it never really seemed to gain as much traction as maybe some had thought early in the season. So can Miami swoop in late and get Lawton Jones? I wouldn't be totally stunned by it, but I would be certainly surprised.
Yeah, I think so too. All right, well, it looks like Oregon is now up again by 2 scores. So we'll continue to watch this one. We'll continue to talk Oregon recruiting all the way up through signing day. Adam Gorney, thanks for dropping by Recruit Reaction tonight.
All right, Josh, see you, man.
Yeah, we will talk soon. What do you guys think? Oregon fans, USC fans, get in the comments section below. Talk a little recruiting with us. All right. We are going to turn our attention back to the SEC, back to the South, and let's bring in Bama Online insider Tim Watts. Tim, big win today. Alabama's final home game of the season. What's your assessment of how this team has grown since that opening season loss to FSU?
I mean, it's been a really rough schedule, obviously, but we've seen them step up and come together. Lost a tough one to Oklahoma, obviously, but their run, that 6-game window they had, was the toughest I can remember while covering Alabama. I mean, it was ranked opponents, and if your opponent wasn't ranked during that stretch, you were playing LSU, who you knew had a lot of talent. You knew you're playing at South Carolina, which is can be a formidable place to play.
Mm-hmm.
I think they've improved to the point where we know where they're at, but they really need to win the game at Auburn to take that next step, or it'll be very similar to what happened last year. But as a team overall, I think the defense has been outstanding. I think they gave up 34 yards today. I understand it wasn't the Green Bay Packers. I understand who they're playing, but 34 yards to anybody is really tough to pull off.
Yeah. So I feel like this team has kind of grown along with Ty Simpson. Who stepped up on offense? Because we know Ryan Williams has had the ups and downs, but who's really stepped up and been the workhorse for Bama on offense?
It's bad timing here, but one of the surprises was Josh Cuevas, who was out today with a foot injury, and there's no determination on when he'll be back, but I think he's been really big. A personal favorite of mine is Jeremy Bernard. I don't think you could ask for more on or off the field. He does a little bit of everything from leadership to talent. Both of those guys have stepped up in the passing game. Ty, of course, has came a long way from that FSU game, which was his first start. Pretty hostile environment, and kind of got behind early in that game. Took a 7-0 lead, but then got behind and never really grasped and came back into that game a whole lot. But I think he's taken the steps you're looking forward to. Right now, I think it's just a tired team. Today, what you saw was Alabama. I think they had 8 rushing touchdowns. They just wanted to get through this game, no injuries, and get on to next week's game in Jordan-Hare.
Yeah. So we've seen a lot of commits on the sidelines. Today wasn't the biggest of recruiting weekends. Last weekend was a lot bigger. But, every week in, week out, we see these 5-star recruits on the sideline. So which of these guys from the 2026 class are we going to see being contributors next year on the field?
I think it's going to be really hard to keep a Xavier Kroll off the field. I think he's a no-brainer 5-star running back. I mean, he just tears it up. If you give him 20 carries, he's going for 200-plus yards. That's a guarantee. Watch him every Friday night. He's got that big game ability. He's hard to bring down. He's strong. He's fast. He's been at every game, and obviously, he's a big-time prospect with everybody that was pushing so hard for him. Leaped ahead one year, similar to what Ryan Williams did. I guess it's super popular now. Everybody can just go when I was growing up, reclassifying was called failing, and you reclassified backwards. And I had to go to summer school a few times to avoid reclassifying. But I think he's a guy that you're looking at. Jaira Edwards, I'm a huge fan of him. He can be a contributor. I think definitely on special teams. He's going to have some other safeties back there to work with, but he's different. When you watch him on tape, he's different. He flies to the ball. He's fast. He was aggressive. He plays everywhere, cornerback, safety, linebacker on one of the best teams in the country. Inside, I'm looking at Nolan Wilson. Alabama struck some gold last year with London Simmons, who contributed as a freshman, came from small ball in Mississippi. Nolan's a guy that's really grown into himself. And what I'm really particular watching closely is Xavier Griffin, because you remember last year Alabama got a big win in Justin Hill. He put on some weight. We've seen him play a lot this year at that linebacker, that outside linebacker position they use. Xavier can play inside or outside. He is one of the fastest prospects I've ever seen get into a football. So if he can get that weight, I think that's going to be key. Get that weight that you get when you move to college. He's got a chance to play early too.
Yeah. So when signing day just isn't what it used to be. You and I have been covering recruiting I've been covering for almost 20 years, over 20 years from you. Nowadays, signing day is almost just like a celebration of the class. It doesn't have the fireworks that it used to. There are some. So as we sit here, 10 days from signing day, what should Bama fans be watching down the stretch? Any needs left to fill here?
I think the staff is looking at some guys. I think they're kicking some tires. We knew heading into this on BOL, we reported they were going to be heavy in the portal. That was going to be a big one. The window was going down to one, they anticipated. They wanted to be active in the portal. I mean, I imagine that's just 2 weeks of, chaos for everybody. Mm-hmm. So I think they're okay where they're at now, but if they can find a gym, and they found some late last year that they like, I think they'll take it. But right now, I think you're at the stage of just holding on to what you've got, keeping the key players in the class. They had Max Sutter, who I think's one of the elite tight ends in the country. He was on campus, and he hasn't been able to make a lot of games. So that was a big one today, him showing up.
Yeah, he was enjoying his time there with Roll Tide Willie, having a good old time on the sidelines in Tuscaloosa. All right, Tim, that's it. But I wanted to get your opinion on this Lane Kiffin stuff.
Hey, I thought that was it. I didn't know I was committing to Lane Kiffin. I mean, I covered him at Alabama. Obviously, he's quite the character. I'm not sure why people are surprised with what's going on. I mean, it's funny to me. Everyone knows where he's going. I think Lane Kiffin knows what he's going to do. I'm not positive. I think I know what he knows what he's going to do, but I don't believe anybody's got a great read on this. I mean, you look at times Ole Miss thinks they have a chance, then they don't. I know y'all had Ben Garrett on earlier. I've talked to him about it. I talked to Shea Dixon on the LSU side. I've texted with the Florida guys. It's just Lane Kiffin. I mean, he's going to do, these situations, and it's going to be interesting because that's a lot of distractions having to go play the Egg Bowl. And that's another, the Mississippi version of the Iron Bowl. There's a lot of weird things that happen in that game, but I'm excited. I'll be watching Saturday to see what he does.
Yeah. And you covered Lane at Alabama. You got to know him a little bit. Do you think he's this great coach that should be highly coveted, or do you think this is like the perfect storm of who's available and a couple very, desperate SEC programs?
I just feel like there's not a ton of great college coaches in football right now. I think there's more good than great. I mean, I think people keep waiting for the great. Obviously, Kirby Smart is elite. You put him right at the top of that thing. I think until Lane wins something, he'll never go to that great category. But that's any coach. You've got to win. You got to win an SEC championship, a national championship. I think he has a chance this year to make the playoffs and make some noise. And certainly doing it at Ole Miss would put him in that upper stratospheric category. But I think you're right. This is a perfect storm. You had, I don't even know how many openings they are. I'd forgot Arkansas was open. It happened so long ago, I'd forgot that was even the case. But you've got schools like Florida, who obviously think he can coach, LSU, Ole Miss. Yeah. And look at his history. Somebody thinks he can coach. He's coached Tennessee. He's coached Alabama. He's coached USC. He's coached for Al Davis. Somebody thinks he can coach. So I definitely think that's the case, that he's capable of running a football program.
Do you think there could be, when this carousel gets spinning, you never know where it's going to stop? Is there anybody on the Bama staff that could be up for a job? Maybe not even a head job, but is there anybody on Bama staff that you could see, elevating?
I think so. Jamarcus Shepard's did some interviews with Oregon State. I don't know where that sits right now, but they've interviewed him, I know, at least twice per our Oregon State site. Kane Womack is a popular name, especially at Arkansas. And look what his defense did this year. And you got to remember, he gave up a head coaching job at a smaller South Alabama to come and prove he's ready for that next level. He's certainly upped his stock this year, I think. That's a couple that jumped to mind. Ryan Grubb, I haven't really heard his name mentioned, but, I mean, this is a guy that was pretty highly thought of as an offensive coordinator.
Yeah.
But, Coach Seattle, was OC at Seattle. So there's there's candidates for sure. No sudden movement yet. But, again, I think a lot of people are waiting until they get over this season. There's a whole lot of openings. I don't even know if there's enough coaches to fill them.
We're going to find out. I mean,
Yeah.
we will find out soon. Thank you, Tim Wads, joining us today on Recruit Reaction from Bama Online. Tim runs a phenomenal site over there with Andrew Bone and the boys. Go check it out. Also hit like and subscribe here to the Rivals Recruit channel because we're just over a week from signing day. Things are about to heat up. Now, we're going to talk a little Ohio State. Let's bring in national analyst Greg Smith. The Ohio State Buckeyes, the number 1 ranked Ohio State Buckeyes, smash Rutgers 42-9, 11 wins. But Greg, this is really where the season starts these days for Ohio State, right?
They're gearing up for this. I saw some jokes out there that they've been load managing during conference play.
They have.
Which they actually have.
They actually have.
It must be nice, right? So they've definitely been doing that, and it's working out in their favor. But this is where the season really begins, because now as we get closer to the game against Michigan and then gearing up for a Big Ten title game appearance and then into the playoffs, this is where, I think the talk around them both on and off the field will really ramp up, because I don't know about you, I feel like we've actually had, for what they're trying to accomplish and going back to back, I actually think we've had not enough talk about that. So I'll be curious on how that ends up picking up as well.
And, it's kind of coincided with Ohio State recruiting. You wrote a great article about Ohio State heating up. They currently have the number 5 ranked class in America. It just feels like Ohio State's unstoppable right now after landing Jay Timmons, flipping him from Florida State, right? You got Clemson pass rusher Dre Quinn. You added Colorado Buffs defensive lineman Emmanuel Ruffin. I mean, this Ryan Day 2026 class almost feels like it can be as good as Ohio State wants it to be.
Yeah, that's exactly how it feels right now. And it feels like they have, at some point along the way during this cycle, they decided they were just going to keep expanding the board and keep taking guys. And I think part of where this comes from is something that Ryan Day has talked about here recently about, it being unfair to teams that are going to go deep into the season with the portal windows and all of that. And they're not able to restock their talent. And they're usually one of those teams, right? So it is self-serving. But on the other hand, it's true. So because of that, they turned around and said, we're just going to continue loading up on high school players. We're getting elite guys, like some of those guys that you named before, and the guys that they already had in the class. And so they're going to keep doing that as a deliberate strategy to continue stockpiling their roster. And then, of course, there'll be players in the transfer market. We've seen that. Julian saying Caleb Downs, who you see starring on Saturdays, are both transfer additions. But they've got a real plan there to continue adding blue chippers via high school.
Man, it is unbelievable. And it sounds like Chris Henry Jr. is locked in. It doesn't sound like they really have to be concerned about anything. We got predators and we got prey on the recruiting trail. Ohio State definitely a predator heading into this. There was some rumors, maybe Blaine Bishop, from Louisiana, but it seems like, is there anybody that the word's not concerned, but is there anybody that you're even watching?
Yeah, I don't think that the Blaine Bradford situation is one to watch. He was just up there recently. I do think, despite what the 2 receivers, Kate Dixon-Wyatt and Chris Henry Jr., said to R. Adam Gorney, I think last night after their game, there's just too much smoke there. And those guys are both 2 guys that are commanding too much high dollar value to then not be hearing out other schools. I am not saying that they're going to flip. I think that both of them, especially being wide receivers, are really in the perfect situation for a wide receiver going forward. Potentially being coached by Brian Hartline is something we've talked to Jameer Brown in the 2027 class, or a 5-star wide receiver, because, there's another one coming about too. So I think those guys are just someone to kind of keep an eye on. But I do think that, their statements of kind of reaffirming their commitments should be taken right now. But teams are not going to give up.
Yeah. And really the attention from Ohio State fans really should be on 2027 right now, where the Buckeyes have the number 3 ranked class in America. You mentioned Jameer Brown. He is the number 3 ranked wide receiver in the country so far. And I think a lot of this has to do with the fact that they have Brady Edmonds on board, right? Yeah. Anytime you can get an elite quarterback committed well before this cycle even begins, it's going to give you that boost. Not that Ohio State needs any more of a boost with wide receivers, but having him on this commit list kind of sets the tone.
Yeah, it absolutely did, and you've seen it on social media and at their games. The pictures from their games, he is always there, Brady Edmonds in Columbus, to kind of help peer recruit and kind of. I know that and just in talking to him too, the Ohio State gives him some guys that are targets that they like, and so he reaches out to them on social media. He tries to be there when they're visiting as well. One of those guys is elite 2027 tight end, 4-star kid Brock Williams out of Illinois, who I do think is trending towards Ohio State. He's at Texas today. Brady has made it a clear priority to get him, but that definitely helps to have that quarterback in your class to kind of help springboard things. And then you put offensive linemen from the state around him, which is what they've been doing as well too. They've got a good mix going on in that 2027 group already.
Man, they are cooking. And today it was all about Buckeyes smashing Rutgers 42-9 and heading next weekend to Ann Arbor, where we said the season begins. So Ohio State fans, talk to Greg and I. How you guys feeling about the season? How you feeling about the postseason? The run to the postseason starts now. Talk to us, comment section below. All right, let's dig in because we haven't really talked about Dayton Raiola. Dayton Raiola decommits from Nebraska on Wednesday, November 19th, exactly 2 weeks from signing day. This could have repercussions for the future of Nebraska football. Not because I think Dayton Raiola is the future of Nebraska football, but what do you think of this development 2 weeks to the day before National Signing Day?
Yeah, I think that is the part that is the jumping off to a point of fans to be like, oh, what's going on here? Because anytime you have a decision made that close to signing day where he has been committed for so long, and he didn't have a lot of other options or offers, right? And no new interest had really come along through the season. I think in talking to people, that's kind of the hope now, is that you end up having, you get a playoff run and he shows some good film and then he ends up, getting some new attention and offers. But it is much less, though, about what's going on with Dayton himself, as you alluded to, and what's actually going on around that. And there are a couple of things here. One that people obviously are thinking of, and one not. The one that obviously is the Dylan Raiola factor, right? I think that when you're talking about a quarterback that was that ballyhooed, a former 5-star kid that came to Nebraska, one-time Ohio State commit, and then a Georgia commit, decided to have gone anywhere in the country, comes to Nebraska where his dad name is in the stadium in the Ring of Honor. They have a great family tradition at that school. And now his brother's not coming there. What does that say? Because, fans may say, well, Dayton didn't want to play, obviously, behind his brother, who'll be gone maybe in a year to the draft, or if something else happens. And then you've got Trey Taylor coming in, an elite quarterback in 27. But then what if the situation is that the family really has questions about the future of Nebraska football and how close they are to the college football playoff, and about trying to maximize Dylan's draft stock? I think that those are real conversations, and I think that it is something that is going to be on the minds of Husker fans quite a bit. And then the other part to this too is, don't forget, for those that don't know, Dylan and Dayton Raiola's uncle, Donovan, is the offensive line coach at Nebraska as well. So there is that part as well. This is a very interesting story that is much deeper than a kid decommitting, a couple of weeks outside of signing day, which is its own news in itself.
Yeah. When Dayton Raiola decommitted, it was instantly like an algebra problem went off in my mind. Like, we have one number showing. There's a bunch of variables. However, if you can solve for those variables, you might be able to figure out the future of Nebraska football. Like, if you could figure out, and I'm sure, Nebraska insiders probably know the answer, but, was Dayton Raiola pushed out of the class? Was he kind of shoved to the side? Did he leave because he realized 14 months after he committed that he didn't want to play in his brother's shadow? I mean, who do you think initiated this? Which side, I guess, initiated this?
Yeah, from my conversations, I think the Raiola side initiated this, which I honestly think it's a little curious because you mentioned he was committed for so long, and they knew at that point too, or at least this summer, that Trey Taylor was coming in the 2027 class, and he's the
Yeah.
real deal. Now they did not know that TJ Lateef would turn out to look the way that he looked last week against UCLA, and they're about to kick off here in a little bit, and we'll see how that ends up turning out, right? Like if you've got a freshman, true freshman in front of you, you've got a stud kid coming in behind you. That is a situation where I could see, okay, I kind of want to, do something different. And that would be totally justifiable and makes sense. The only problem is that we're talking about a much bigger situation because of who he is, who his family members are, and how tied they are to the Nebraska football program. This is going to be a thing that is going to be fascinating to see it unfold here over the next really couple of weeks as we get ramped up to the portal. And then, by the way, Dylan is out with a season-ending injury as well. So there's just a lot going on, in this situation that will need to be unpacked in short order.
Yeah, and I mean, like you said, hasn't taken any trips. Not that I haven't seen him take any trips to other programs. I didn't really see him post on social media, the like taking things out of your bio. I mean, all of a sudden he just decommits from the program that he had been committed to for 14 months. I mean, I'll let Nebraska fans do the science. You guys get in the comment section, do the science. What does it mean? Dayton Raiola's decommit 2 weeks before signing day. Is this some insight into what's happening with the Raiola family in Nebraska? Is Nebraska just moving on? And Greg, what do you think of Trey Taylor? I mean, it seems like he is the real deal, and there's no hesitation. See, if anybody would be concerned about maybe a bias, wouldn't it be Trey Taylor, who's worried about Dylan's younger brother maybe getting preferential treatment? But Trey Taylor, he's not blinking.
That is a great point, and about the preferential treatment potential there. In talking to kind of the family and people around Trey Taylor, I don't think they're worried about that. I think that they know that they're going to have to compete anywhere that they go, especially with the schools that they were looking out at outside of Nebraska, Alabama, LSU, and others. So they were going to have to compete either way. But I do think that he's the real deal, and I think that he is a really, really talented prospect, among the best quarterbacks in the 2027 class. From anywhere in the country. And so Nebraska's getting a really good one. And we talked about Brady Edmonds and peer recruiting there. Trey Taylor has taken that thing to a whole nother level. I've been covering recruiting for, a decade plus, and I've never seen a kid be this involved, especially being this far out from being on campus. And obviously Nebraska fans love it and they eat it up. And he's going to continue to do it because kids are responding and at least coming to check the place out. And their 27 class is off to a really good start.
Yeah, that was maybe the only downside of Raiola's flip, is it came so late. He wasn't able to really be that vocal recruiting, whereas Trey Taylor, well over a year before his time comes, he's out there on the sidelines, almost a extra recruiter on the staff. So pretty cool stuff going on there with Trey Taylor. But what do you guys think? Get in the comment section. What does the Dayton Raiola decommitment mean? Is it just a decommitment, or does it mean more? You guys talk to us, comment section below. All right, Greg, it's going to be a fun week. We're going to talk to you more this week on our roll up to signing day, but appreciate you stopping by today on Recruit Reaction.
Hey, thanks for having me, man.
All right, there it is. You guys, we're going to watch TJ Lateef now. They're about to kick off against Penn State. Hey, if TJ Lateef can go out and win these next two, maybe it gives him a leg up. But I think there's an open competition if Raiola decides to run it back next year. We'll see. We'll see what happens. But you guys, thanks for hanging out with us on a special Steve Fongless edition of Recruit Reaction. We'll be back tomorrow with the Inside Scoop. We will be back on Monday with Steve, the great Steve Wiltfong, and the Wiltfong Whip Around. Thank you guys. Hit subscribe. Thanks for hanging out. We'll see you guys tomorrow.